of the merchant banking firm, George Peabody and Company. By 1864, upon Peabody's retirement, Junius takes control of the firm.
Junius Morgan always had a gravely mature air. He was the sort of prematurely middle-aged young man old financiers found consoling. He was solemn and businesslike and always master of his emotions.
Junius Morgan understands that to play in the big league, he needs to venture into government financing. And for a banker in the 1800s, nothing presents more opportunities than wars. In 1867, France tries to purchase Luxembourg from the Netherlands. However, Prussia opposes the move, leading to rising tensions. The Chancellor of Prussia, the notoriously ruthless military man, Otto von Bismarck, waits for an opportunity to strike. On July 19, 1870, Napoleon III declares war on Prussia. This declaration aligns perfectly with Bismarck's aspirations for a war that would further German unification under Prussian leadership.
From the very beginning, Bismarck had a wild temperament, and it was very difficult for him to rein it in. He had these two sides, a clear intellect and tremendous precision. It was the combination of his wildness and his intelligence that drove him to escapades, drunken excess, or duels or fencing. Bismarck always wanted defense to prove his manliness. I see him as a raging bull.
Having financed wars for a century, the House of Rothschild possesses an uncanny ability to predict if a country will win or lose. They have no faith in France to defeat the formidable Otto von Bismarck, and it will not make sense to lend money to France. While major banking houses like Rothschild and Baring avoid lending money to the French government, Junius Morgan sees this as the opportunity of a lifetime. It doesn't matter to him if France can win the war. What's crucial is if France can repay the loans. He quickly understands that even if France loses, the nation's economic resilience ensures their capability to pay back the loans.
Although French politics was very shaky at the time, the French economy was very diversified, and more importantly, it had a very efficient tax collection system.
Through his syndicate, Junius Morgan raises over £10 million for the French army. As an American banker, he also grants the French government access to purchase American arms. The war resulted in a decisive German victory. The conflict ended with the Treaty of Frankfurt in 1871, leading to significant territorial losses for France and the proclamation of the German Empire in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles. When the war ended, the defeated French didn't renege on the loan, as Bismarck predicted. Instead, they prepaid the bonds in 1873. As a result, Junius Morgan walks away with a fortune from this windfall.
The loan netted him a whopping £1.5 million. This vastly augmented his firm's capital and propelled him into the upper ranks of government financing.
And now, the House of Morgan has become a formidable force in finance. While Junius Morgan strives to establish his banking dynasty, the House of Rothschild faces mounting challenges. Following the death of James Rothschild in 1868, the younger generations of Rothschilds become increasingly fragmented. To rebuild their prestige, they look beyond Europe, investing heavily overseas, allocating 37% of their portfolio to Egypt, and financing Indian railroads. But to truly recapture their past success, they need a more expansive marketplace. As old empires fade, a new empire emerges, bigger and more powerful than any of the world has ever seen. From the 1850s to the 1870s, America experiences significant growth, propelled by the Industrial Revolution, westward expansion, and the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869. This era witnesses the ascent of industrial magnates. Cornelius Vanderbilt reigns in railroads, Andrew Carnegie in steel, and John D. Rockefeller in oil, culminating in the formation of Standard Oil. These tycoons transform American business, introducing innovations and fresh organizational structures.
The story of America isn't just the story of the patriots that helped build the democracy. The reason the United States is the leading economy in the world is because of the work of entrepreneurs who created entire industries that propelled the United States to be the leader of the free world.
For years, the Rothschilds underestimated America, deeming it a land of madmen. But seeing the rise of the House of Morgan and Wall Street's emergence as the new global financial hub, the House of Rothschild starts to pursue more business opportunities. And nothing presents better opportunities than when there is blood on the street. For America, that day arrives on May 9th, 1893. Following decades of a booming railroad market, the industry, plagued by overexpansion and overbuilding, suddenly collapses. The result is one of the worst depressions in history, the Panic of 1893. The president, Grover Cleveland, is determined to maintain the gold standard and refuses to engage in expansionary fiscal policies such as tax cuts and increased government spending.
Back then, the US dollar was not the main global currency. The British pound was. President Cleveland felt that to maintain the credibility of the US government, he must maintain the convertibility of dollars to gold.
The Cleveland government is running dangerously low on gold reserves, so he calls on J. Pierpont Morgan for assistance.
Around this time in the late 1800s, Junius Morgan had passed away in a traffic accident, making J. Pierpont Morgan the head of the House of Morgan.
The federal government is days away from depleting its gold reserves. Morgan understands the outcome will be disastrous for the young country and for his own banking empire, and he knows there is one family with access to a vast amount of gold that can help the federal government, the House of Rothschild. For the last 3 decades, the Rothschilds have been strategically investing in mining operations for gold and silver.
Their interests in gold mining grew rapidly. Moreover, many of the bond issues handled by the Rothschilds in this period were linked to the recipient's adoption of the gold standard.
J.P. Morgan raises $65 million by issuing government bonds and uses the money to negotiate with the Rothschilds, purchasing 3.5 million ounces of gold for the Fed.
Back then, banks really liked doing business with the government. Why? Because governments usually pay back their debts, and they can always collect more taxes if needed.
The collaboration of Morgan and Rothschild makes their bond offering one of the most sought-after investments. The gold bonds sell out in 30 minutes when offered to the public. America enters the world scene as a new empire, one that rivals any in the history of the world, a superpower. While the Rothschilds successfully expand their business reach in America and throughout the world by the late 1800s and early 1900s, the old empires in Europe head for another major showdown. By the early 1900s, tensions among European powers reach a boiling point, fueled by imperial rivalries, military buildups, and complex alliances. While the path to war threatens businesses with potential catastrophe, the House of Rothschild sees an opportunity to capitalize on the growing tensions. The head of the London Rothschild Bank is Natty Rothschild. He advocates for the British government to expand its naval capabilities.
So many European countries started to spend more on their militaries. For that, they needed money.
What the Rothschilds don't realize is that the war that is about to unfold will be more brutal and deadly than any they have ever encountered before. Following the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, Europe plunges once again into full-blown war.
Look at Serbia. Serbians are saying, we don't want to be ruled by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's an old, tired, imperialistic structure. We are our own country. It's the Serbians who assassinate Archduke Ferdinand and his wife Sophie, and of course, that's the trigger that begins the whole conflict.
This war features trench warfare, new weaponry,